Picture the moment right after surgery, when the tumor is finally out and the surgeon tells you, "We got it." For a lot of patients, that's supposed to be the end of the story. It isn't. Because for people treated for high-risk melanoma, the real fight often starts after the bandages come off. Not during the operation, but in the years that follow. Every scan after that carries the same unspoken question: is it back? For roughly half of these patients, the answer eventually comes back yes. Picture 100 people in that same follow-up clinic. Within 5 years, about 50 of them will hear their cancer has returned, even after surgery, even after today's best immunotherapy drugs. That's the real enemy in this story. Not the first tumor, the second one. The one that comes back quietly, sometimes years later, when nobody's watching for it anymore. For decades, oncologists had one answer to that fear: more of the same treatment and hope. Now, for the first time, there's something aimed directly at that fear. Not a stronger dose of the old approach, but a medicine built from the cancer itself. Here's the strange part. This medicine will only ever be given to one person. Not one batch shipped to a pharmacy. One dose, made from a piece of that patient's own tumor, that will never exist in that exact form again once their treatment is finished. The company behind it is Moderna. The technology is the same mRNA platform that gave the world a COVID vaccine in under a year. Back then, it was built to fight a virus that every human on the planet had in common. This time, it's aimed at something only one person has ever had: their own cancer. So how do you build a vaccine for something that only exists in one body? You start by reading it. When a tumor is removed, scientists don't discard it. They sequence its DNA, the same way you'd read an instruction manual, letter by letter. Then they compare that manual against the patient's healthy cells, hunting for typos, places where the cancer's code doesn't match the rest of the body.
Those typos aren't harmless. Each one can produce a strange, misshapen protein called a neoantigen. And neoantigens exist nowhere else in the body except on the cancer itself. Think of it as a wanted poster the tumor accidentally stapled to its own front door. The immune system has never seen this face before because until that tumor existed, neither did the poster. A computer scans through hundreds of these wanted posters and picks the ones most likely to catch attention. Scientists then write the instructions for up to 34 of the strongest candidates into a single strand of mRNA. That strand becomes the vaccine, and its only job is to hand the immune system's enforcers, its T cells, a clear photograph of who they're hunting. No two patients ever receive the same one. A flu shot is identical in every arm across the US this winter. This one exists in exactly one version, built for exactly one immune system. And while that vaccine is being built, during those weeks of sequencing, designing, manufacturing, the patient is doing the hardest part of all: waiting and hoping the cancer waits too. It sounds almost too specific to work. That's the question a trial called Keynote 942 was built to answer. Researchers enrolled 157 patients who'd already had high-risk melanoma removed, the kind most likely to return. Everyone received the standard treatment, a checkpoint inhibitor called pembrolizumab, better known as Keytruda. But 2 out of every 3 patients also received the personalized vaccine. 18 months later, the difference was already visible. Out of every 100 patients on the vaccine, 79 had no cancer return. On standard treatment alone, only 62 did. Researchers kept watching to see if that gap would close. It didn't. It grew. By the 3-year mark, patients who got the vaccine had a 49% lower risk of the cancer returning or of dying compared to standard treatment alone. 5 years out, that protection was still holding, and there was an early hint that patients were living longer overall, though that number is still too young in the data to call proven.
The side effects for most patients were almost anticlimactic. Fatigue, a sore arm, chills, the kind of thing you'd shrug off after any vaccine. Serious complications happened at nearly the same rate whether or not someone received it. That combination, a real benefit, no new danger, was convincing enough that in February 2023, the FDA granted it Breakthrough Therapy status. That's not a formality. That's the FDA saying, move faster on this than usual. Here's the part a press release would leave out. This vaccine isn't sitting on a pharmacy shelf. What you just heard came from a mid-stage trial, and even a great mid-stage trial isn't a finish line. It's a green light for something bigger. Right now, that bigger test is already running. Over 1,000 patients, 165 hospitals and cancer centers on nearly every continent, all asking the same question at once. Does this hold up at scale? That trial won't finish enrolling until 2029, with final results landing in 2030. Which sounds like a long wait. It isn't wasted time. Between now and then, 1,000 real patients are going to live out this story in real time, sequencing their tumors, receiving vaccines built just for them, and finding out, one by one, whether the odds we just described hold up outside a smaller trial. Every year between now and 2030 adds more evidence, not less. This isn't the story pausing, it's the story getting bigger. That patience is what separates real medicine from empty promises. Treatments that skip this step, that get rushed to market on early results alone, are usually the ones that quietly fail people later. The wait isn't an obstacle standing between patients and a cure. It's the safety net making sure the cure is real when it finally arrives. There are still real hurdles standing between this result and your local hospital. Because every dose is custom built, it can't be manufactured like a flu vaccine, in one giant batch shipped everywhere at once. Each vaccine is its own tiny production run, a process that used to take 9 weeks per patient. Scientists have already compressed that down to under a month, but every week still counts when the thing you're racing is a disease that can spread while you wait. And building a medicine one person at a time isn't cheap. Current estimates put the cost above $100,000 per patient before it's even approved for wider use. So what happens if Phase 3 confirms what Phase 2 already suggested? The same idea. Read the tumor, build the vaccine, aim it only at the mutations that cancer has, is already being tested against lung cancer, kidney cancer, and several others. If it works in melanoma, there's no obvious reason it should stop working elsewhere. Some researchers believe personalized vaccines could eventually become as routine after surgery as chemotherapy or radiation is today. Analysts are already forecasting a market worth tens of billions of dollars by the early 2030s, a number that only makes sense if a lot of very cautious people believe this isn't a fluke. None of that is guaranteed. Phase 3 trials fail more often than anyone likes to admit, even ones that looked unstoppable at this stage. But for the first time, a randomized clinical trial has shown that a vaccine built from nothing but a patient's own tumor can meaningfully change their odds of staying cancer-free. 15 years ago, manufacturing a one-of-a-kind medicine for a single human being sounded like something out of a movie. Today, it's sitting in a freezer in a hospital in Ohio, or Texas, or Melbourne, waiting for the next patient's biopsy to arrive. The COVID vaccine proved this technology could move at record speed. Now it's chasing something far harder to outrun, a disease that has outadapted nearly everything medicine has thrown at it for over a century. We won't know if it's one until 2030. But somewhere in a hospital right now, a patient is finishing their final dose, going home, and simply waiting to find out if their own body just learned something that no other body on Earth ever will.